we will start the next lecture, or the first lecture actually. So this is about what is an image, and this year we will work with MATLAB. Hola, I don't like. ¿Cómo tu nombre? Cristina. Cristina, cuéntanos un chiste. Sí. Bueno, todos los que han llegado tarde han contado un chiste hasta ahora, así que lo puedes ver. Voy pensando.
No sé.
Bueno, piénsalo, luego no lo cuentas. ¿Cómo tu nombre?
Yo Inés.
Inés. Pues Inés. Un chiste de sabrá. Bueno, pero lleguéis tarde. El próximo día llegáis pronto. Si no pasáis la... Bueno. So this year we will work with MATLAB and images. So part of the slides that typically I skip because normally we didn't do the practice with MATLAB, but this year we will do. So these slides are more relevant this year. Okay, so. Bueno, Gonzalo, cuéntanos un chiste, anda.
Vale, dice, ¿te gusta la pintura? Sí, pero a partir del segundo botella apagado.
Okay, so we introduced this idea last week, that is that an image is a variation of some property, some physical property, and typically it is either color or intensity or both actually, over space. So you have two coordinates, spatial coordinates, and then for every possible point you have a different value. And this different value and these variations are what makes the image. And if you zoom in the image further and further, at the end, you see some little squares. So those little squares are the sample representation of the continuous variation. So if I look at you, you have a continuous variation in space. But if I take a picture of you in the computer, there is no an absolutely every possible color for absolutely all spatial locations. So at some point, we have to sample the space that is what makes these little squares. And we will see that we have also to quantize the color. So if you look at one particular pixel, what you see are three values. That is the one possible way of encoding colors. That is this RGB encoding. So RGB encoding keeps three numbers, one for the red channel, green channel, and blue channel. These numbers go from 0 to 255. So 0 means no intensity, 255 maximum intensity. And this 255 is simply because we represent numbers with 8 bits, and it is the maximum number that you can represent is 8 bits. And yeah, by combining these three lines, you get a color. And if you have a gray image, you only need to keep a single value. And the reason is that if you take this value and you repeat it 3 times in each one of the channels, then what you have is a gray value that goes from completely black, that is 0, 0, 0, completely white, that is 255, 255, 255. Okay, so this is a little bit more formal definition of what a pixel is. So a pixel is a pair of values. So first you have to encode the location of that pixel, and then what is the intensity of that pixel. And you see that we have bold letters. So bold means these are vectors. So we have a vector for the location, and we have another vector for the intensity, because we have seen that in general, you will need at least 3 numbers to represent what the intensity is at a particular location. So a pixel is a pair of these two things, so the location and the intensity at that location. Okay, so yeah, this is a repeat the same idea. Simply that if your image is monochrome, so that is it is a gray valued image, then it is just a scalar number. Okay, so yeah, again the same idea. So you need to encode what is the pixel location, and you have the coordinates that we will refer normally as row and column. So these are the rows, these are the columns, and then you have to specify for each row and column what is the pixel value there. So you have to say for this particular location what is the intensity in the 3 channels. Okay, so here you have an example. So for instance, for the row number 272 and column 277, then the intensity at that point is this 1243.61. Okay, just one possible value. Just looking at the numbers, would you expect that this is a bright pixel or a dark pixel? Dark. Why? Yeah, because the values are low enough so as to be dark. Okay, because otherwise, if they are close to 255, it should be a bright value. Okay, so we introduced already this model of image formation. So this is a very, very generic model. So there is an object in the real world. This object emits photons, for instance, or emits or reflects photons. So these photons are collected by a lens, and this lens projects those photons into a plane that we will call the image plane. So we have a source of energy that in general it is the sun, the bulbs, or whatever. It can be inside the object. So if the object itself is the one that emits the photons, how is that called? Fluorescence. So fluorescence. Hola, ¿cómo te llamas? Perdona. Ignacio, por un chiste, Ignacio. Hombre.
No estaba preparado.
¿De qué?
Que no estaba preparado.
¿Cómo que no? Venga, pues piensa, rápido.
¿Cómo se queda un mago después de comer? Mago, tío.
Venga. Okay, so if the light, if the object reflects the light of some other source, then that is called reflection. There is another possibility, that is that the light goes through the object, and then that is called, how do you call that? Transmission. And the object has to be transparent, because otherwise it blocks all the photons.
Would you repeat the definition of fluorescence?
Fluorescence is when the object is the one emitting the photons itself. And in fluorescence, you will see that probably in the other course in the imaging techniques. But in fluorescence, you have to excite the atoms. So you excite the atoms with some wavelength, and then the atoms absorb that energy and re-emit that energy at a different wavelength. Okay, so yeah, we have 3 imaging modes. One is reflectance, the other one is transmission, and the other one is fluorescence or emittance. Okay, good. Then the lens or the imaging device in general, it applies some transformation to the image, and the transformation can be a geometrical one, like this one, that is an image inversion that probably you have already seen in an optical course in 2nd year, right? And it can be geometrical, but it can also be kind of local blurring. And this local blurring, we will model it with a convolution. So the same concept of convolution that we have in 1D signals, we will have it in 2D signals. Okay, so, and then there is a recorder. So there is a device that has to convert those photons arriving into some electrical signal that is recorded by the device. And this is typically done with a digital camera, and we will not see how to construct these converters. So these converters take photons and convert them into electrical signals. But you can imagine that it has some kind of sensor there, and this sensor somehow captures the light and converts it into electrons. And what it is clear is that there are some configurations in which you can do this camera to be continuous, to do a continuous acquisition of the electrons, of the photons arriving there. But in general, you will do it with discrete sensors. So you will have an array of sensors, and each sensor will be very small, but it occupies some space, and it is in charge of converting the light that arrives to that particular area, small area, and converting it into a current. Okay, so at the end, what we will have is that each sensor cannot distinguish inside the sensor area, cannot distinguish all the continuous variations. What it does is that all the photons arriving to this particular area are converted into current, and then from the sensor on, you cannot distinguish where the photons arrive. So all you see is kind of average, and that is why we have these sample images. So the discretization in space typically comes from the discretization of the sensor array. And then, so this will produce a discrete real valued image. So at every point, what we have is a current. And in principle, that current is a continuous current. So you can have any possible value between whatever microamperes or and this number and this other number in microamperes. But so those are continuous colors. But you know that if you work in a computer, you cannot. So for an analog circuit, continuous currents are fine. In computers, continuous currents are not fine. So you have to discretize that, and then there will be another step that is quantizing those currents into steps. So probably you have seen that with voltages. So let me make some drawing of this. So let's say this one. Right. Okay, so you probably are familiar with this concept that if you have, this is time, this is some voltage. I have been talking of currents. You can do the same analog with voltages. So you have some voltage here, and then what you have is the discretization of this voltage with stairs. So you do something like that, right? So the continuous current or the continuous voltage is the analog world. The discretization is the digital world, and that is a minimum step that you can encode, delta V, and a small step is the one that determines what is the difference between images between one color and the next. So let's say that you have a color 000 that is black. The next color that you can have is 001. You cannot have anything else in between. Okay, and this is determined by this discretization theorem. Okay, so far so good. So we have 4 versions of this real world image. So you would have the real world image, the one projected by the lens. Then you would have the sample image, that is the one that is acquired by the sensor array in a continuous way. But then we have to take this one and quantize it too, because you want to produce numbers that represent those voltages or those currents. And this one never exists, but conceptually you could have it. So in a mathematical world, you could have this image. So this is the one that is at every possible location in space. It is quantizing the intensity that you have there. So conceptually, you could construct it, even though physically you can never have it in a physical device. So in a physical device, you only have this one is the arriving one. Then there is a discretization of space and an averaging over space. And then that average over space has to be quantized. Okay, so yeah, this is some repetitions of the same idea. Okay, so now we have been talking that you have a continuous image that is projected onto the sensor. And then you put on top the sensor array, and each one of the sensors is responsible for averaging or for counting how many photons are arriving to that sensor. So at the end, what you will have is a kind of average. So let's see if I can. So let's look at this. Can I draw here? So let's look at this pixel here. I cannot draw. Here. Aquí.
Sí, pero si no se ve desde acá.
¿Aquí? ¿No se ve en el caso?
Si picas ahí.
No sé. Vamos a ver. Pues vosotros sí lo veis. Well, okay, so let's look at that particular sensor. So in that particular sensor, there is a little bit of red light arriving. So this red light arriving, actually, you can imagine how these sensors are constructed. So you have 3 sensors in the same spatial location. So one of the sensors will be responsible for measuring the red intensity, so measuring photons in a given wavelength. Then another sensor will be responsible for measuring photons in another wavelength, that will be green, and another one for blue. And so the sensor that receives the red light, so will produce a little bit of response. And that is why this is a little bit like pink, because it is averaging a lot of white with just a little bit of red. And then it produces something that is somewhere in between. That is the average of all that. So how to model that? So as a mathematical construction, you can say, okay, so let's say we will refer to the spatial coordinates of the continuous image as rho and chi. And rho and chi is rows and columns. And then this C means this is the continuous image. So this is the continuous signal that arrives to the sensor. And then for a particular location, let's look at this one now, because I have the subscripts here. But let's look at this one here. So this one here, I have to compute the average of all the continuous signal arriving to that point. So this is the continuous signal arriving to that point. And then I have to compute the average of that. So compute the average means integrating and dividing by the area of that sensor. Okay, so this is the area of the sensor. And then I have to integrate from C delta to C plus 1 delta. So you see, from C delta to C plus 1 delta. So these are chi coordinates. So the chi coordinate goes from C delta to C plus 1 delta, and the same for the rho coordinate. The rho coordinate goes from R delta to R plus 1 delta. So this integral there is a model of what the sensor is doing. So it is just a mathematical way of writing what the physical device is doing. So this physical device is converting this continuous image to something that now has two transformations. One is in the values. So these values are now averages. And the second one is in the spatial coordinates. So these spatial coordinates are continuous. So they belong to R squared. While these ones are defined only at these places. So now these ones belong to Z squared. So now I have numbers like row 1, row 2, row 3. If you want to, and you can be very creative, it depends on where you put the origin. You can have row -1, row -2. So it is just a matter of where the origin is. So that is where I'm using the integer numbers, not the natural numbers. Okay? Okay, good. So then, let's see if I can move to the next. Here. Okay, so then, yeah, this is the same discussion where we are integrating and so on. So this is assumed of that. So now we are integrating this little square here. So this is the continuous signal. We will produce an average of that continuous signal. And this average is performed in the 3 channels. So the 3 sensors are at the same time computing this average. Okay, good. So this is all the same. Then this average is a continuous or discrete number. The average we have computed. It is continuous. This is a continuous average. So in principle, this image sample at RC can take any value, can take whatever this integral is. So it can take any possible value in the real scale. So this is, and now we will do the quantization. So the quantization here it is exaggerated, but the idea is that of all the continuous possible intensities that we have at the input, you produce discrete values. This is the stairwise approximation that I did before with the voltages. So now you will approximate all these voltages by a single value, and all these voltages by a single value. So all these points here. So let me see if I can. Probably I can choose a color, but I don't know how to do that. Now it is. So all these possible values they are substituted by this one, and all these possible values they are substituted by this one, and all these possible values they are substituted by this one. So this is the stairwise approximation. And now this is the real image that you get in the computer. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So if you open MATLAB, for instance, and you read an image, there is a command to do that. That is IM read. IM is image read. And then it is quite clever. It can understand many different file formats. So here we are reading a JPEG file that we will see at the end what a JPEG actually means. And we key the result into an object that we will call I for image. And then if we ask MATLAB what is the classified, so what are the kind of values that we have recorded in I, what we get is that we have unsigned integers of 8 bits. So those are the numbers that we expect now, so they go from 0 to 255. And we can ask MATLAB what is the size of that image. So the size is 600 rows, 1200 columns, and then 3 channels. So without the 3 channels, this is called a matrix, right? With the 3 channels, now you can think of it as make some drawing there. So you can think of it as 3 different matrices. And we have one for the red channel, another one for the green, another one for the blue, each one with the numbers inside. And so those are the matrices, and the 3 together. So this object together, how is this called? Probably you have not heard that name. It's called a tensor. So a tensor is the generalization of a matrix to multiple dimensions. Okay, so actually an image is a tensor. Okay, so we will represent that image. To do that, the commands in MATLAB is first you create a figure, and then you can image it. So you can put image I, and you can change title and label, so on, forever. And here the main change is this one true size. So you might have noticed that the previous image is distorted. So here it is again, we have to distinguish between the image content and the image representation of that content. So one is the content itself. The content itself is this size. But when you represent it, you can do whatever you want with that representation. So for instance, you can scale it, and this is what MATLAB has done. So MATLAB has somehow mapped all this information into this area. And this area, for instance, you may know that the number of columns is twice the number of rows. But here, this length is not twice this one. Okay, so you have shrink your image in the horizontal direction. And it is important that you start distinguishing that. So one thing is the image content, the other thing is how you represent that image content. Okay, so if you give MATLAB the command true size, now you are asking for the same size in pixels. So the pixel size to be the same in all directions. So actually, you may think of this as these pixels being square, while the other ones, they were much thinner. Okay. So, and again, it is a representation thing. So it is only how things are represented in space. Okay, good. So then we move on a bit, and yeah, you can. This is again a MATLAB thing. So you can, if you click there, you can make zooms on a particular region. And again, now it is distorted because the pixels are now wider than they should. And here you have the column numbers. So these column numbers, so we have selected a region that in the original image, they occupy these columns. And as an image itself, so if we consider that this is the only image that we have in the world, then the first pixel would occupy column 1. Okay. But since it has been cropped from another image, it is not column 1, but column 650. Okay, so, and again, true size. Okay, so. That is nothing. Since this year we will spend a little bit more time in MATLAB, so we can try to understand a bit better the MATLAB notation for images. So here we have. So here we have the original image. This is the one that we read, and then you are selecting a particular range of rows. So this is from row 125 to row 425 included. And then the same for columns, and then this means all channels there. Okay, so now we have a new image, that is image J, and we can represent it again as we did before. So this is just a representation. And then we select figure 1 and we close it. Okay, so this is MATLAB syntax for doing different operations. Okay, so you're familiar with MATLAB, right? Okay. How many courses have you used it? 1, 2, 3.
2 or 3.
2 or 3. Okay. Why does it move here? Okay, so now we try to read another image, and this time instead of a JPEG file, it will be a GIF file, that is another file format, and we do the same. Now, that is something that is a bit surprising because it has the right class size. I like this. So it has the right class size, so those are unsigned integers of 8 bits, but then there is no channels. There are no channels. I have just a matrix of numbers. And when I do the representation, this is what I get, which is a pretty weird thing. So what is the difference between the GIF files and the JPEG files? So if we explore it a bit further, we would discover that there is something that somehow escaped when we read the image. And now we are reading the image, the matrix, and something that is called the color map. So the color map is something that if we do that image I that we did before, we get the wrong image. But now, if I set the color map, I get the right image. So what the color map is. Okay, so let's see a bit more. Okay, so the color map is, this is just to show that if you have the same image, but now in JPEG file, you don't need to read the color map. So you just read a tensor T, and then you can represent that image. Okay, so what the color map is. Okay, so we have the two images, and one in GIF format, the other one in JPEG. So let's look at the JPEG one. So the JPEG one behaves as expected. So when you go to a pixel, it has some value. Okay, some values, red, green, and blue channels. And here is the syntax to access a particular pixel. So we are interested in that particular pixel, and then we get the 3 values associated with that pixel. But this is the JPEG image. Okay, so what happens with the GIF image? So the GIF image plays some trick. So the trick is the following. So you can take these 3 values, divide them by 255. So now you have values that are between 0 and 1. And now you construct a table of those values. That table is called a color map. So in one particular location, this particular location, we have these 3 intensities that we have here. Actually, those are not the ones. They are these ones. These values here. You can see those are these lines here. Okay, so now what we will do with the color map is that for an image, you don't have to encode or you don't have to store for a particular location the 3 intensities that you need from each one of the channels. But you will keep an index. So you say, at this location, I need index 214. And then you go to the table, to the entry 214, and you look at what are the intensities there. So the intensities there are these ones, that are the ones that you have to represent in the image. And actually, that is what you are doing. When we don't have the, yeah, so we don't have, let me go back a bit. So when you are setting the color map here, what you are doing is, okay, so you have some numbers. So the number at that particular location was 214, but this 214 is not an intensity, it is an index. So if you want to make the right representation, if you don't give the color map, it is just representing the 214 here. But the 214 is not an intensity, so that is why we get a weird image. But now, when you are setting the color map, you're saying, no, this 214, you have to go into this table and see what are the intensities at the 214 entry. And then, those are the colors that you have to represent. And that is a convention that these color maps, they are a scale between 0 and 1 and not between 0 and 55, but this is just a matter of convention. Okay, is it clear this idea of the color map? Yeah. Okay, so then here you have, so how many, if you have a color map with just 8 bits, because our image that we read from the GIF file was an unsigned integer 8, so you have only 8 possible entry tables in your color map. So would you expect that you have a large degradation of the quality of the image? So how many colors can we represent with 8 bits and 3 channels? We reasoned that last week. So let's say that you have 3 bytes to represent RGB. So how many different colors you can represent with that? How many?
2 to the power of 3, 1.
No?
155 elevado a 3.
156 elevado a 3. So you can represent 2 to the 24th colors, that is 16 million colors. Now, if I have only 8 indexes, how many different colors I can represent? 256. So there is a reduction of 2 to the 16, that is 65,000. So I have 65,000 less colors than I could have with the 2 color RGB encoding. Okay, but here you see that it is not so bad actually. So this is the 24-bit 2 color, and this is the same image, but now using only 256 entries in your color map. So that is what this means. So you have 256 entries. So this is a color map with 8 bits, but then each one of the entries has 24 bits. Okay? And there must be differences, but they're not so much noticeable. Maybe here, for instance, in this reflection, we see that here there is a very smooth degradation, while at this point we have much bigger steps in colors. And the same happens with the noise. Probably you cannot see from there, but if you get very close to the image in your computer, you would see that this one has a little bit more noise than this one. Okay. So, but the result is not bad, and we have 65,000 less colors than this one. And in the space, how many times or how many less coefficients we have in this image than in that image? For every pixel, how many bytes do you have here? 3 bytes. And how many bytes do you have here for every pixel? Just 1. So this one is 1/3 of the space of that one. And the quality is still good. And you can imagine that if, for instance, if you are representing videos where the images are changing very quickly, you cannot even notice these small differences. So to note these differences, you need some time to compare the two images. But if this is a video, you can even compress much more than a factor of 1/3. Very good. So yeah, here you have what I was mentioning. So if you make a zoom, for instance, of that part, you see here the stairs. Well, here you have a much smoother variation in color. Okay, so yeah, just to repeat this idea of color maps. So when you read a file, there are 5 formats that keep images in true color, like JPEG, but there are some other file formats that keep the images as an index pointing to a color map. And this is the case of GIF, and it is also the case of bitmaps. So bitmaps is a file format that keeps the images as a set of indexes. So if you look at the image itself, it looks as a bunch of numbers, but these numbers are not intensities. These numbers are indexes. So this tells you that you have to, if I want to represent this particular pixel, I have to go to the entry 111th in that table, and then I look what the intensities are, and because of this convention that these numbers are between 0 and 1, I have to multiply by 255, so to get this particular color, and this particular color is the one that I will represent. Okay, good. So then, yeah, this is a bit of how to convert a color map image into a true color image. So let's say that you have a bitmap file, so you have to read the set of indexes and the color map, and then somehow you use these to transform the color map at these locations into something that is the true image. And we will not spend time in this conversion, but if you carefully read what it is doing, it is just this. So it is taking the color map, accessing at these locations, and then you are taking all the colors from the color map. So here you have a very long list of intensities, and then you are resizing this very long listing of intensities. You are resizing it into a different size. So a different size that is simply 512, 512, that is the size of that image. And then the 3 channels. And then you multiply it by 255. Just undo that normalization that is divided by 255 and the scaling between 0 and 1. And then you have to convert it into unsigned integers of 8 bits. So it looks a little bit complex, but if you pay attention to all the operations there, they're not so difficult. Okay, then I could construct any color map that I would like. So for instance, let's say I want to construct a color map of gray values. So we have said the gray values, the gray colors, they have the property that the three channels have the same number. So all I have to do is to construct a ramp. So this ramp goes from 0 to 1 and in steps of, what is a step between two different numbers? Here. So what is that step? You look at the way it has been constructed.
And 1 divided by
255. So the delta here is 1 over 2. Okay, so I construct that ramp, and then if I want to construct a column map of gray values, gray color, what I have to do is to repeat this ramp 3 times. And then I have this list repeated 3 times, and that is my column map. And if I want to have a red column map, then I take that ramp, put it into the red channel. So this is the red channel. And now I construct 2 green and blue channels that are full of zeros. So those are only red colors. And if I want to construct a green column map, you do the same, but now the ones that are zeros is the red and blue, and the green gets the ramp, and the same for the blue. So if I take an image, if you take an image and you separate the 3 channels, and this is what we are doing here. So this is taking channel 1 from this tensor. So if you take that image and you represent it with a column map that is the black one, that is the one with grays, this is what you see. And if you represent it with the green channel with the same column map, this is what you get, and the same with the blue channel. And now we can look at different part of the images to see if we understand what we are seeing. So for instance, let's look at this particular part of the leaf. So that particular part of the leaf is red. So we would expect to have high intensity values in that area, in the red channel, and low in the green and blue channels. This is what's happening. The same would happen with, for instance, this part of the leaf that is red, that is green. So we have low values here, but much higher in the green channel, and then lower again in the blue channel. And the same happens with the grays. So the grays, they're not so bright in red, they are not so bright in green. You need some green, but the brightest part get it from the blue channel, because the grays is black and blue. Any questions so far? Okay, so we have separated a color image into its 3 channels, and we have used the gray value color map to represent those channels, but obviously we also use other color maps to represent this image. So we could use the red color map to represent the red channel, then the green color map to represent the green channel, and the blue color map to represent the blue channel. So we now can imagine that what the devices, the display devices, what they are doing. Check something. Switch on my computer. No. So you can imagine that what the display devices are doing is just overlaying these 3 color images in a space, okay, in some way. Okay, good. So yeah, this is the same, and the same with the gray map. There is a bit more on how, once you have a color image, or once you have an image object in MATLAB, so we have learned how to read those images, but how to save those images. So let's say that you have an image I, and you want to save it in bitmap. So you give the name and you have to specify what is the file format. And some file formats like JPEG, they have some other parameters, like for instance the quality. The quality is what is the compression that you want to apply to the saved image. And for instance, if you have an image that you have the object is just a set of indexes, then you have to give the image and the color map to the saving, the writing routine, so that it can compose those into the final file format. Okay, so there is something I would like to show you that is related to the practice that you will do along the course. So let me stop sharing here. So I will stop sharing from the class computer, and I will start sharing from my computer. So this is now my computer. Can you see? Yeah. Okay, so now, well, let me close this. So this is the practice that we will construct together along the course. So we will jointly construct this application. So this is application for, I have conceived it as a pedagogical application, so just to show ideas of image processing. And the point is that it will, let's run it. So you are familiar with MATLAB. Have you constructed MATLAB applications before? No? So you will learn. And as I told you, before trying to ask anything, look for yourselves. I don't mind solving any question, but I want some proactive attitude from your side. Okay, so now we are running the application. So this window behind is how the application looks like. The application designer looks like. So this is to code the application. This is the application running. So the application will have some basic operations like loading images or updating the image list. So you will see, for instance, let's say that I want to read this image. This is a set of fluorescent cells, or an image of a few fluorescent cells. And now here we have the list of images that are available. And here we can update the image list. So if somehow we have opened new windows with more images, we can update the image list, and then this list will update. And here we have the lectures, exactly in the same order as we have them during the class. So we have seen a couple or just one operation that is separating the RGB channels. So here your task will be to add more and more operations to this list. So you can be very creative here, so you can put whatever you think can be useful, and then create that application. And we will not see today the details of the coding, so how you have to construct the applications, but you can start already today thinking what application you would like to do. Okay, so I have done a couple of them so that you can get some code to look at. And let's say these separate RGB channels. So now I can take this color image and separate them into 3 different color maps. So these are the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel of this fluorescent image. So have you seen before fluorescent cells images, and you know how they are constructed, or you want me to explain a bit how they are. Just a bit. Okay, so what you do is you put some tag, and tag is biochemical tag, to a protein of interest. So let's say that you want to see where the cytoplasm is, where the nucleus of the cell is, and what are the actin filaments, for instance. So in the gene that encode for the actin, for instance, what you do is you put another gene. So those are transfected cells that somehow has a modified genome. And at the same time that the actin is expressed, the polymerase, the RNA polymerase, will continue and create this other second protein. And this second protein is fluorescent. So whenever the green, the actin is created, this fluorescent protein will also be created. And it has to be in such a way that this second tag doesn't prevent the original protein from its standard structure. So if the actin filaments, they are filaments, so this tag cannot prevent these filaments from forming. And for instance, this is what is done here. So now we are seeing the actin filaments here. And this is a protein called DAPI. And DAPI is a protein that is only expressed in the nucleus. And so we can see, if we tag the DAPI protein, we can see, for instance, where the nucleus is. And I don't know which protein is here, is this one, but we are seeing the cytoplasm of that cell. Okay, so, and the way, so now you have your cells with the modified proteins, and you have to excite those fluorophores. Fluorophores is the part that makes the fluorescent part of the AD. So you have to excite them. So you have some lasers at green wavelength or red wavelength or whatever. Actually, this is not true. You have to excite at one wavelength, and then the protein fluoresces at some other wavelength. Typically, they are very close, so you need a green laser to excite a protein that is fluorescing in green. But otherwise, it is just to look for these pairs of exciting wavelength and emitting wavelength. And yeah, so this is what you do. So you excite with green, then you get the green image, and then very quickly you excite with red, and then you get the red image, and then very quickly you excite with blue, and you get the blue image. And you repeat this cycle over and over, and then you can have a video of how these cells are progressing over time. Okay, so I have used, now you understand I have used the green color map to represent this image, but I could have used, for instance, the gray color map, and I would have exactly the same information. It is just a matter of representation. See? So the color map is something to represent, but it is not the information content. The information content, as long as I know that this is coming from the blue channel, this is the information. And if I represent it in blue, in red, or whatever other color, I don't care. Okay, so actually, what we can do is, I will close this other application. I will close this in, but I will not close that one. So now I will use the merge RGB channels. So the merge RGB channels is just the opposite operation. So instead of splitting, I will take 3 images and put one in the red channel, another one in the green channel, and another one in the blue channel. If I put them in the right order, then I should get the same original image. And this is what I get. But I can put them in reverse order, for instance. And the information content is the same, but now it is displayed in a different way. But it is the same information content. So that is how many photons are coming from this area, when I excite with a particular light that is marking the active filaments, for instance. It doesn't matter in which channel that is. Okay, so I can put it in any other channel. So which are the ones I have? So I have blue, so let's put here green. I have more beautiful versions of the same image, but the information content is always the same. Okay? It is just a matter of display. Okay, so this is your task during the course. So you have to create tools to illustrate image processing operations. So I have created those of these. So we will see some other day, probably tomorrow, how to construct these applications. So close on this. So I have created in these files, I have created a shared document that is called practice ideas, that for every lecture gives some ideas of what possible tools you could construct. So I have constructed the first tool. So for instance, one that split the RGB channels and merge the RGB channels, so you can have some hint of how the code should look like. And then I have added a couple more of ideas, so you are free to take them, any one of you. And this file is shared, so the first one arriving will take the idea. So for instance here, what you would do is, okay, so the black lines are ideas that have not been taken yet. And then you can say, so my name, and the file that I will construct is this one. So CO, L2, and then inspect, values. And now you can construct a tool that makes this zoom and showing the pixel values as I was doing in the slides. And if it is not finished, you can mark it somehow. So you can put it, I don't know, red if you would like, or whatever other color. But green is it is finished, and everyone else can use it. Okay, and we will see later how we can share all this code. And okay, so I will put them in black again. So this is black, and it is not assigned to anyone. So if you see some idea, you can add also your own ideas. So these are the ones that I have thought for. But whatever ideas you have, you can simply add them there and put your name, and then you start doing your practice. And I have also added a couple of videos. So, if we go to yesterday, we have here a couple of YouTube videos where I'm explaining how we will share the code. We will share the code through GitHub. I'm showing how to clone the GitHub repository in MATLAB. And you can see it yourself. We will see them in class together anyway. And here is a bit of the description of the code. So for the couple of examples I'm giving, how the code is structured and how you can start your own code. But again, we will do it together in class. But I find them useful to have them recorded somehow. Any questions so far? No? Okay, so I will stop sharing from this computer. So let's stop sharing. Did I? Yeah, probably yes. And now we'll come back to this one and start sharing again. Okay, so we are here. So now we know an image is nothing more than a tensor value. So you can think of a tensor as three matrices, one after the other. So we can take a couple of images and start, those are numbers, so we can start doing operations with numbers. So we can, for instance, start adding those numbers to get kind of mixture between these two images. And there are a couple of details that we have to take care of. So one is that they don't have the same size. So you may have noticed that this image is larger than this one. So we have, before adding two matrices, they need to have the same size. Okay, so let's do that. So we will read first image, and we are showing it. Then we are the second one, we are showing it, and then we are getting the sizes. So here we are getting the sizes, and now we are getting the common size. So this is the extra. So you look at here, this is the number of rows, number of columns, or
Creo que no nos oye.
first image has been called JW for Jim Woodring, and the second one is Mark Ryden image. So this is the difference in number of rows between one and the other. So we have one image, the first one that is like this, the second one I will put it like this. So this is the size of the first one, this is the second. So this is the size of the second, this is the size of the first one. And this calculation is just how many pixels are on one side. Okay, so you see, we compute the difference divided by 2. So we are getting the differences, right, is these two segments. And then if we divide by 2, we are getting just one of the segments. And the same for the columns. And now, what we are doing is we know that the first image is larger than the second. So we are, this is the starting point of this image. So this pixel there is having the value or the location RB, and now we are going from RB to RB plus the size of the second minus 1, so that the number of rows here is Rn. Do you agree with that? Okay, and then we are doing the same for the colors, and then we are taking all the time. So, and we have to do that for the first image. And there is another modification. That is, these images, they are of unsigned integer 8 bits. So let's say that I have a value in one of the images that is 250, the other one is 100. So those are 2 pixels coming from the 2 different images. What is the addition of these 2 values? 350. No. No, because you are in a computer. In a computer, you are storing these numbers as 8 bits, these numbers as 8 bits, and 350 you cannot store with 8 bits. So you have something that is called overflow. So you have overflow here, and the number that you get in the computer is something like, not this one, but something like 96 or something like that. That is the overflow. So it is like if you wrap around your representation, so you go from 350, you have to subtract 155, and then that is the number you get. Okay, so adding numbers with unsigned integers of 8 bits is not a good idea. So that is why once we have the region that we want to add, we convert them to doubles. Now in doubles we don't have these overflow problems. And then once you make the addition, we convert them back to unsigned integers of 8 bits. But before doing that, we have to take care of dividing by 2. Because otherwise, we will not have any problem in representing 350 in doubles, but when I won't convert that 350 into integers of 8 bits, then I don't have enough space for that, and I have the same overflow problem. So I don't have the problem when adding, but I have the problem when converting. So now I divide by 2, and by dividing by 2, I make sure that the maximum number that I have in both images, that is 255, this is the maximum addition that I can have. Addition of these is, I don't know, 510, whatever. And then if I divide by 2, I get again 250.
Y dice desde casa que si puedo escribir en otro lado que no se ve nada.
Que no se ve nada. Vaya por Dios. ¿Y dónde escribo?
PowerPoint deja escribir con la vitamina, pero tienes que abrirlo con...
Estás abriendo el PowerPoint.
Estoy usando el Acrobat. Estoy usando el Acrobat. Y PowerPoint lo malo que tiene, o sea, tengo los PowerPoint, pero por lo que sea, se ve que bueno, esta es Lightning ya 6 años. Y las versiones actuales de PowerPoint, algunas caracteres los ponen bastante mal. Pero bueno, para el próximo día, que ahora mismo no los tengo aquí, para el próximo día me pongo los PowerPoint y...
El PowerPoint con presentación en modo... No me sé el nombre directamente, es la configuración que tienes que hacer, te sale en los bordes una barra para poder pintar.
Ya. Bueno, pues lo haremos el próximo día con el PowerPoint. Hoy ya no puede ser, lo siento. No puede ser, porque los PowerPoint los tengo en mi ordenador, pero si pongo en mi ordenador no puedo pintar aquí, me imagino, con esto. Tendría que hacerlo sobre mi pantalla, no sobre la pantalla.
Puedes mandar el PowerPoint descargado.
¿De qué?
Puedes descargar el PowerPoint.
Sí, pero para el próximo día, ya para mañana.
A lo que queda.
Sí. Okay, so. Pero no se ve ni siquiera en lo que se graba.
Se ve eso.
Ah, se ve eso. O sea, que si lo hiciera ahí, sí que... Bueno, pues lo siento. Bueno, una razón para venir. Nada, ya sé que no es culpa vuestra, es que nos mandan a la mitad a vuestra casa. Okay, so good. Yeah, so this explanation is now what comes here in the slides. I'll explain the same thing as I have been doing. Okay, so what if I multiply the two images? So if I multiply the two images, it seems that well, I get something weird again, but it is, those are numbers, so I can take those numbers and apply any operation that I like. So now it will be highlighted later, but I like to highlight. So this is the multiplication, and then the rest you understand all the operations that have been doing there. So this is the MATLAB operator to multiply two matrices point by point. If you forget this dot before, then it will be done a matrix multiplication. So in the matrix multiplication, the number of rows, the number of columns of the first matrix has to match the number of rows of the second. So this is the multiplication of the two, and then we will introduce a new trick to map the images back to the 0 to 55 range. So you can see that the operation has been done in doubles, so you don't have any problem with the multiplication of the numbers. So what is the maximum number that we can have here? It doesn't mean that we will have it, but what is the maximum number we can have?
2 by 5 squared.
255 squared. Okay, so, but it doesn't mean, it has to be that there is a pixel in which both images have a value to 55, otherwise we will not get that high. But it doesn't matter, so we will have some minimum value, we will have some maximum value, and this is the notation in MATLAB to say, I don't care what rows or columns you are looking at, so it is just consider this matrix, all the numbers in the matrix. And then we are doing this operation. So I will write this operation in different ways. So let's say we have an image. We are subtracting the minimum, dividing by this one, and then multiplying by 255. And we will call this I prime. Okay, so I will do that in the get away from here. So I will do that here. So this is not what I want. Okay. So the operation we are doing is this one. So this I prime is 255 I minus n minus. So small m is the minimum, capital M is the maximum. So what is this equation? So if we have recognized there, if I plot it in the I prime space, what is that equation? I can write it like this. So I can write it like this is I. Actually, the drawing in Acrobat is much better than in this one. Okay, so minus n 255 and then n minus. So this has this structure. This is AI plus B. This is a line. And which line? So this line is mapping the minimum and maximum into the 0 to 255 range. So it is this line. So we are taking whatever input image, we are taking the minimum and maximum and taking all the values here and mapping them into the range 0 to 55. So this equation here is very well done. So it is the one of mapping the minimum and maximum into a given range. And actually you can extend it. Okay, so a more general equation. Let's say that I don't want to so I don't want the output to be between 0 to 55, then I can write a more general one and say this is m prime plus m prime minus m prime divided by m minus m, and then I minus. And now you recognize that the equation of the line. So this line is mapping between m and capital M to m prime capital M. This is this line here. And this is simply the equation of a line, right? This is the slope, and this part makes the shift. Okay, any question? No? Okay, so let's come back to the slides. Okay, good. So, yeah, this is the same explanation I have done. And here we have, for instance, another application of these operators. So now we have an operator that takes minimum and maximum values and map them to the 0255 range. So for instance, in terms of practice, could be an operator that you could implement. So you give me m prime, small m prime, capital M prime, and then I will map one channel or the 3 channels, or you can be very creative there. So then I will take this operator and apply it to an input image. So this input image has very little contrast. So little contrast, we will see it later on the course, but means that the minimum and maximum, they are very close to each other. So if they are close to each other, so that means that they are not taking advantage of the whole dynamic range. So we could put numbers from 0 to 50 to 255, but somehow we are putting numbers only between 100 and 150. So the first part of the dynamic range is lost, the last part of the dynamic range is lost too. So what we can do is to simply remap the values between 0 to 55. And now we know how to do that. So, and this is the effect. So you are taking this image and transforming it into that one. And again, the number or the amount of information is different between the 2 images. By doing this transformation, are you gaining some information? This is the same amount of information. This is the same information, only that displayed with different numbers. But the information is the same. Put it, and this is an even more interesting question. Have we lost some information? And how do we know if I have lost information? Let's answer the second one first. So I have lost information if I cannot recover the original image. So if I make transformations such that I cannot go back, I have lost information. So the kind of lines that we had before, are they invertible? So if I take between the minimum and maximum and I map them to 0 to 55, and I give you what were the minimum and maximum were. So could you go back from 0 to 55 to the minimum and maximum? You could. So you have not lost information, and I can recover it exactly. So I haven't lost any information there, aside from the quantization. So the quantization is introducing a little bit of noise. But aside from that, I have not lost a significant amount of information. Okay, good. So here we have some more ideas. So for instance, let's say that I have an image and I save it, and we know now how to save images, with 0 quality of JPEG. So 0 quality is the worst JPEG version that you can have. So we have an original image that I'm not showing here. I'm just showing the 0 quality image. And now I can subtract the values between the 100% quality and the 0% quality. So the differences are the information that I have lost. And those information, those differences, there will be numbers, and I can, for instance, plot those numbers, or plot. Those are the difference itself. So if I call the absolute value between the original image minus the quantized one, or the one with lowest quality, then these numbers, they have to go from where to where? From 0 to 255, for sure. Because these are going from 0 to 255, these are going from 0 to 255. Well, actually, in the worst case, they could go from 0 to 510, but this is kind of extreme case. Okay, so but in general, there will be numbers around 0. So if I make a display of numbers around 0, I will not see anything. So now that we know this operator, I can use it to map the differences between 0 and 255 and try to see what the differences are. I will recognize that there are a few values that are pretty wide, and those are the ones driving the mapping. So most of the values are around 0, but there are a few that are higher, and then those higher values. So let's say that most of the values are around 0, 1, 2, but there is one that is 50. So this 50 will be mapped to 255, while the rest get mapped. So let's say this 50 to 255 is a factor 5. So the rest will be mapped between 0 and 15, while the brightest points are at the level of 250. Okay, so still it is pretty dark. But now we know that those are numbers, so I can do many more tricks. For instance, I can take the difference. Take the logarithm. So taking the logarithm, we know the logarithm is a function like this. So it's a function like this. And below, let's say that I have a difference of 0. There is a pixel that I represented exactly. Then the difference will be 0. The logarithm of 0 is minus infinity. So it is not a good idea to put just the logarithm alone, so that is why you put the +1. And you construct a new image L. And now this image L is the one that you mark between 0 and 255. And because this curve saturates very quickly, now these differences between 0 and 1, 2, 3, that were the small errors that we had in this area, and we had this big value of 50, but now the differences are much smaller because of the logarithm. Can you follow that? Okay, good. Then I rescale the logarithm of the differences between 0 and 255. And now it is much more clear what the differences are. And we see that the differences are mainly at the borders of the structures. And in the flat areas, like this one, in the flat areas, the errors are much smaller. So JPEG is a very good technique to encode flat areas, especially if you go to these 0 quality JPEG files. And otherwise, the errors, you get them in the borders. Okay. And we have seen this way of displaying, but I could display in a different way, and you can be very creative about how you display your errors. And again, we have to separate the content. The content is this. This is the image content. And to separate it from how it is displayed. So you can display it this way, this way, this way, but information content is exactly the same. Okay, good. Then a little bit of pixel indexing in MATLAB. So let's say that I have I want to apply a function IP. I want to apply a function IP to all my pixels. So a possible way would be, okay, so you loop over your own pixels, and they go from 1 to the number of rows and 1 to the number of columns. And you get that pixel, you apply the function, and you assign it to a new output image. And this can be done like that. But in MATLAB, and this is something particular for MATLAB, this is very inefficient. So in C, for instance, this is the only way to go. But in MATLAB, you have these are syntax that is much faster. So that is why, for instance, here we have used these matrix operators. So this is a matrix, this is another matrix, this is an operator between matrices, and this is a function applied to a matrix. So you could do the equivalent with for loops and computing the same for all possible scalar values. But it is much more inefficient. The same is happening here. So if you look at this is a matrix, all these are scalars. So you are making some operation between a matrix and a scalar. This is a well-defined operator. And then you are converting a matrix into another matrix with this operator, but this is a matrix operator. And again, you can construct a for loop that makes these calculations but at the level of pixels, but it is much more efficient if you do it at the level of matrix. Okay, so then we move on a bit. Here is again some more idea of how to deal with pixels in MATLAB. So here what we have is, let's say that we have an image with its 3 indexes. So we have one index for the rows, one index for the columns, another index for the channels. And then we could take, for instance, let's say this is our image, and we want to take every third row. So we want to take rows 1, 4, 7, 10, and so on. So one possible way of doing that is you construct an index that goes every n, and here n is equal to 3. And then MATLAB supports this indexing so that you take the rows 1, 3, 1, 4, 7, 10, whatever, and then you take any column, any channel in there. So you're taking the full row, this one, this one, this one. And you could do the same with the columns. Okay, so this is the same. And you can do it in both. Okay, so you can construct your vectors in R, your vectors in C, and then you can kind of make the intersection too. So this would be rows 1, 4, 7, 10. This would be columns 1, 4, 7, 10. And then you are taking the intersection of those two set of indexes. And any channel. Okay, but even these indexes do not need to be sorted. So I can take, if I want, because for some reason I find it useful, I can take the indexes in any arbitrary order. So I can take, for instance, the rows 10, 7, 15, 27, the same for the columns, and then somehow I am reorganizing all these combinations. So I'm taking row number 10 with column number 5, and this will be my first pixel. And then row number 10 with column number 11, it will be my second pixel, and so on. So yeah, this is just an illustration of that. And there is a very funny application of this. That is, okay, so let's say I read an image that is of this size, then I take the rows in a random order. So this function here is a random permutation. Do you know what a permutation is? Permutation is you take a collection of numbers and you shuffle it, and you take them in any order. So you take a random permutation of this size. So this size is just the number of rows. The same for the number of columns. And now I construct a new image J that is these rows and these columns combined in this funny way as we have in here. Okay, so just accessed in an arbitrary order. And again, have we lost information? You cannot see anything there, but is the information in there? It is. Only that it is scrambled, but as long as the transformation is invertible, we have not lost it. So all I need to do is to find the inverse of that transformation. And the inverse of this random permutation is just this thing. So you take the rows and columns in the order that you have constructed them. So those are the randomly permuted indexes. And now you put them back, the new image, at the locations given by these rows and columns, and you take a scrambled image. This is the one scrambled. Okay. And I have it. So as long as the transformation is invertible, you're not losing information. So this is another very easy application that you could construct in real practice. Okay? And again, be creative, be proactive, invent new things. And at the end, you will be evaluated on how many tools you have constructed and what is the difficulty of those tools. For instance, constructing this tool is very easy. You have the code actually in the slides. Okay. No other question? No? Then we continue tomorrow.